Phap Dung, we seem to be moving back into an age of extremist politics, where we're seeing a resurgence of hatred towards minorities, xenophobia, misogyny, and a lot of young people especially are seeing that what they took for granted is in danger of being dismantled, and they want to act. What's your advice for people if they feel that? What's your advice to them?
Yeah, we need to act in a certain kind of way. So action needs to be informed, let's have insight. So sometimes when we act out of impulse such as fear and so on, is not helpful. So the first thing, the action that we need to do is come back to ourselves and take care of any emotion or any type of views that can disturb our center, and then in that way we can act in a way that is calm, that is constructive, that is peaceful. And so most of the time we act and it's impulsive, and we believe so much that in our own view is right, and we are unable to be patient and to be solid and not be reactive. So action, first of all, needs to come from a real solid place. And so return to ourselves, take care of those emotions first, and that will give us the clarity, and that will give us a time to look at ourselves first, take care of that. And from that space, our action will be more effective and will be more, has a much better potential.
There's some people who say that that anger is important, that actually when you're being threatened and when you feel that what's most dear to you is being taken away from you, that anger is a very powerful emotion, that it's not a time to be compassionate, it's a time to sort of really sort of meet that anger coming towards you with anger coming back. What would you say to that?
Yeah, there's a kind of wrong perception about that anger creates change. But if you look at the history of humanity, that you look at anywhere that there's anger, violence, it created change, but it perpetuates. It's a kind of energy that if you use that energy to solve anything, it creates more. So I think so non-action sometimes is very powerful. So sometimes we underestimate someone sitting very calm, very solid, and not reacting. And then they can touch a place of peace, a place of love, a place of non-discrimination. That is not inaction. That is not explosive. That is not, newsworthy. But if you look at the Vietnam movement during the War of the Buddhists, there was no anger. There was people going into the street and behaving in a way that trying to not choose sides between the North and South, but saying, let us love each other as brothers. That was very forceful, but there was no anger. It was firm, very strong, but they didn't have to hate and anger, because they saw both warring parties, the soldiers, American, North, South, as themselves. So it's possible to have change without that kind of force. And I think we need to learn that. Even in our own personal life, we react out of this place of anger, and we see it doesn't help. And this expands to groups, to nations, and as well.
You talk about the importance of seeing the other in you. So for someone in America who's looking at Donald Trump, they would say, what do you mean he's in me? Well, what does that mean? And if you believe that, then how do you work with that?
Yeah, it is, we have the wrong perception that, we are separate from the other. But then that we are individual, have nothing to do with society. So in a way, Trump and every other element, every other person is a product of a culture, of a times. If we look more deeply at the way we've been living and how we are connected with a culture that supports these things. So in a way, Trump is not, he represents something, he's a point. He's a product of a certain way of being in this world, or on this planet. So in a way, it's very easy to have scapegoat and say, oh, but if we look closely, we do have elements of Trump in us. And it's helpful to have time to reflect on that, so we don't, are not easily fooled. Because sometimes we say, oh, now they're out of the way, and we relax ourselves, and we think that's change, but in fact, it is a very illusion, and to think that we remove somebody and we take them out and then everything is good. But so you have to see more a bigger picture. So when we say self and other, it's a chance for us to kind of see our connection, and in that way nourish our compassion for ourselves and for the others. So we sometimes when we look dualistically, it can create a lot of wrong perception, and the energy and the action we do is very harmful. We can push the divide even further, rather than trying to understand.
A lot of people don't wish for difficult times, but when a difficult time comes, that can be the time of greatest learning. So what do you think the opportunity is for America as a nation, given where it's at, to reflect? What is the insight that you're recognizing?
Yeah, this is the hardest thing for people, is for them to look at their suffering. And as a nation, it's hard for us to look at our own suffering as a nation. When we touch suffering ourselves, we want to run away, and we want to, stimulate and consume and do things to distract ourselves from our suffering. So this is a nature that needs to be changed. We need to sit and really listen to our suffering and come in touch with it and understand where it comes from, the source of it. And it's from there that we can move towards a good direction of healing and transformation and reconciliation. This is true for an individual, it's also true as a nation. We think that America was great. We need to look at that. It's like, now we're not so great, but in fact, have we been great? So this is an opportunity. We're very vulnerable. And anytime anything is vulnerable, very tender, it has a lot of potential. So for me, every day, I pray for that we do take this opportunity. There's a lot of suffering. And it's not just in America. We just woken up that this is actually the usual for a lot of other nations, other parts of the world, that we, as an American, as a nation, we probably have been the catalyst to that instability. This is the first time, I think, well, not the first time, but this instability, this insecurity stuff is pretty high now, but it's pretty normal for other countries. That we've kind of done that too. So I think it is a little bit an opportunity for us to come back and to see what parts of our nation we have overlooked. And we thought everything was fine, that we were great, but hey, look, And it's not to look and try to remove it, but to look and see that suffering and what we call great is somehow very linked. And that's been my contemplation since the election, to resist the idea that I can remove something completely, and that there's something pure, and and that's a hard thing to touch, because we do have a tendency to try to remove elements. So suffering helps us to go deeper. We see that in our own personal life, and we see that within growth in anything positive or anything for well-being is having to touch suffering. So it has a role. It has a role to play, the suffering as a nation. Yeah.
One of the key points around Buddhism is around deep listening. And one of the things in America has been this idea that there have been these echo chambers, that the progressives talk to the progressives, the right wing talk to the right wing, but actually nobody has any understanding of each other. How important is it to actually break out of just speaking to people like you and to actually start to hear other experiences? What difference can that make?
Yeah, I was just sharing about the opportunity. This is the great opportunity, because it's true. If anything, there was a wake-up call that, you know, we've been kind of like in a bubble, and that's great, because we are not only living in an American bubble, we're living in a cultural bubble, and we forgot the planet and the way we view it. So it's not just about one nation and the injustice and the suffering of that nation, but we've been living pretty privileged lives within the nation as well as a nation in the world, on the planet. So for us to listen is crucial. I think we need to actually listen to the suffering of others without judging, listen without criticizing, so that we can understand the other perspective. And to resist judging, you know, to think that we're always on the right side, that's, you know, personally is tough, as well as a group is tough, because, you know, we have such a tendency to do that. So our teachers always encourage us to form groups, and in order for deep listening to happen, we need to create environments where they each have a chance to listen to themselves first. So the capacity to listen to the other group, the foundation for that is your ability to listen to your own suffering, to take care of your own suffering, and to know it, because most of the time we're reacting from our own childhood suffering and cultural and ancestral suffering that we don't know. And I think this is a cultural thing that we need to overcome for our ancestor, for us to each, you know, touch that place in ourselves, to find that stability, to listen with openness, non-judgment, non-attachment to my view, your view, our view, to listen without, you know, being stuck and having force others on our viewpoint is crucial. The freedom of having and respect for other viewpoints is so needed now in order for us to come to another breakthrough.
It's hard, though, for people to say, I respect your view, if I fundamentally disagree with it. And I think it's dangerous. So how do you go about doing that?
It has to start from that, because you don't want to be confrontational, because first, you need to listen to understand first, and to not react first, and maybe take it home first. You know, go back and reflect on it and understand the root of that. So it's not always constructive to be, you know this at parties and so on, or gatherings, social gatherings. You know, between two individuals, it never helps. It's a waste of saliva. And it's the same thing with groups and nations. So listening to someone and feeling that you need to just come back and calm first, and the clarity from which you speak. And so in a way, using loving speech is crucial as well. So it goes hand in hand, deep listening and using loving speech. So I think it's more effective, because the other person, you know, they won't hear your point of view because of your choice of words and your criticism and your judgment on them. It doesn't help. So in a way, you first have to accept their viewpoint, and then maybe shed a little light in terms of where you're coming from. So this is how I practice, and I find it very, it has more effect. So it's not always, you know, confrontational. It's aikido, you know, you have to, it's skillful means. So when you're dealing with reconciliation, there's always skillful. You have to be very skillful how you do it. It might be right, but if you're not skillful, it will not be effective. Appropriate. you need to know what is appropriate. Are they ready for it? If they're not ready for it, you're just going to create more, perpetuate. And the other is timeliness. So these three should always be there, and that requires a lot of practice. You might be right, but if it's the wrong time, you're not going to get any effect. Timeliness, appropriateness, skillfulness. These are the methods of communication and reconciliation.
Your teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, has this phrase, he says, peace in myself, peace in the world. A lot of people find it, who are also individually suffering, find it very difficult to find that peace in themselves, never mind the world. What are the practical steps people can take to actually come back to themselves, to actually feel that sense of peace, so that when they go out, they're coming it from a place of sort of equanimity?
Yeah, that's the hardest part for people to accept, that the connection, the suffering in the world is related to the suffering in myself. The way we live, the way we use media, the way we speak to our loved ones, and the way we treat ourselves, the judgment, the discrimination we have towards ourselves, the expectations that we do on ourselves, the violence, the war that we create in our own heart, our rhythms and so on, and the way we live our life. So peace in oneself and peace in the world is pointing to the fact that our mind, our body, how we take care of it is crucial, and our way of living. So our teacher in the last maybe 30, 40 years has emphasized on the 5 mindfulness training as a way of living. So it's not peace as something, hope in the future, but peace begins right with you in the present moment. How you turn on the water, how you walk, how you eat, the choices you make, and how you behave at your workplace. And this is very hard for people to see that connection, because we're so isolated. We've become so specialized in our tasks, but we don't see how interconnected it is to the system that it supports. So peace in oneself, peace in the world is very hard for it to accept, because it's not just about right and wrong, but it's about our way of life. So the 5 mindfulness training, true love, respecting life, true happiness, communication, how we consume. These things if you have time to reflect on the 5 mindfulness training, you see very clearly how connected we are, our peace and world peace. So we cannot demand that if we don't have that within, or training it in our life. So on the path is the path of peace. It's not the path towards peace. And this is very crucial. So we think we can have a means to get us to an end of peace. But our teacher reminds us constantly that the peace needs to be the path. So there's no path to peace. Peace is the path. In every moment we train to touch that. In our activist work, in our daily life, when you come home, how you wake up need to show what you're being active about. So it's not like you live in a certain way and you ask for something else. Those two need to come together, and the more we live like that, the more we emit that.
A lot of people think Buddhism is around going into a meditation hall, sitting on your cushion, and that's the life of a monk. What has Buddhism got to teach us about activism?
Yes, you hit, that's our teacher's life. His whole life, he had no choice. He was born as a monk during a time of war and violence. So it's just, it's very clearly, if you look at our teacher's life, you will understand that they go hand in hand. Being peace and acting for peace must go hand in hand. So the Buddha's teaching, the Buddhist teaching is not philosophical for us to, study, but Buddhist practice, the Buddhist teaching has been therapeutic. it helps us heal. It helps relieve suffering within ourselves and within the world. So it cannot be Buddhist teaching and Buddhist practice, or it's not Buddhist if it's not engaged. It's not part of your life. It's not in your life. So for me, I think that informs the way we need to act and help change the world. It needs to be informed by compassion. And this is crucial in our time. Sometimes we get out of the cushion, we want to act, but it's not from a place of love. So we love this about our teacher's life. People criticize us. How come you guys not doing what Thai has done in the wartime, which is get off the cushion, go out there and be in the news and confront people. But sometimes the greatest action is to sit there and be still. Most of us are habitually always trying to do stuff, but no effect. Sometimes sitting now, it could be that you need to also sit still and the non-action to cultivate compassion and love. And that will move you to act, and you will act very differently. So for me, we have to be careful about the image of getting out of the cushion, acting, but we're knocking doors down and breaking windows and teapots and stuff. And that is not what Thai is talking about. Thai is talking about get off the cushion, and when you walk out of that meditation hall, you do it mindfully. You open the door, you put on your shoes. And so the peace is not broken between the meditation hall and the front line. Those two, how you move from the meditation hall to your protest line, crucial.
You've been your community has been very supportive of the Standing Rock protests against the sort of oil pipeline. Is that a sort of form of protest that you have respect for, and if so, why?
I think it came out from the Earth Holder Sangha, and some of our members there. Earth Holder Sangha is a group of practitioners who are making efforts in sustainable living, environmental action, and some of the members are part of that community in Standing Rock. And then we came across that call, and it was a nonviolent movement, and we saw the approach was very in line with our non-discriminative action, is into being. Beautiful. I heard the way they protest is that they form the line, not a line, that confronts the officials, the police. Usually you see protest lines like that. But they formed a circle, and they face inward, and they pray. Now that is beautiful action. That is, you don't discriminate that is the enemy, and you make a front. But the image of a circle, and you can come. And they invite the military and the police to come to be part of their circle, if they're willing. So they in their statement, they see the wisdom, the compassion, the non-discrimination between us and other. Now that is in line with Thai's movement during the war, and we see that more and more we need that kind of action that shows a more inclusiveness, and that there is no enemy. In fact, the enemy is a kind of energy that if we call enemy, but in fact that suffering helps us to look at ourselves. And that's what Standing Rock allowed us and reminded us. Very beautiful, the movement, where actually the veterans stepped up, and we heard a couple of thousand came to support them. And after their, I guess, I hate to call victory, but it's just a part of the movement. The veterans actually began anew. They said sorry to some of the leaders, Native American leaders. For us, that action is very healing. It was only a couple of hundred in the gym, but you see the ramification, the love, the compassion that it emits is beyond the action, beyond those who participated. I was very moved by that.
So if a young person came to you now and said, okay, so I need to find peace in myself first, I need to sit but then I want to act. You've given an example of Standing Rock and why you feel that's been very supportive of the work you've talked about. But what other advice would you give to people about once they've settled themselves how to act?
I think they need to first build a community, build a group. We cannot do this by ourselves. You know, when we already, the environment, the society is so it alienates us from others. So we have to mobilize and find like-minded people that are cultivating the same thing as us: compassion, non-discrimination, love. And it's from this attraction, this refuge, you'll know what to do. And it will come. But we need to build from that. Sometimes we don't need to go look for a cause. Someone said, well, you know, it's the other that needs to hear. It's stuff in your community, that's all fine. But already there, that comment tells you that we need to go find an opposing thing to oppose. Already is based on dualistic thinking. You know, you need to go tell them because they're the one that needs you to hear what you have to say. But in fact, if you approach it like that, it's very confrontational. So my practice is to cultivate peace and love and build that. From that, the action will happen. In fact, it will attract people who are lacking that. What we need more is community that practice love and understanding. You see, so the action is not different, like you have to go somewhere to do something. But the action could be that you sit still, build love, have that, collect people, and just the fact that in the world there is a group of people who are vibrating love, understanding, non-discrimination, it will attract. And this is what I see we need more of. I mean, the front lines and all these, Standing Rock, they're great for that because they also show us that there's a way of acting that moves that from that vibration. And more and more we need that because our society, our modern society is so alienating, so we're very separated. So community for me, I would say, build community, and in that harmony, love, and understanding for each other. And then when you act together, it's more powerful and it's more sustaining.
And what would you say to people who are on the front line in another way, which is the people who are at risk from these more extreme politics, so refugees, minority groups, who are actually living in real fear now that actually they are physically and emotionally now at risk and more risk, and that actually their communities are not safe, that their lives are not safe, that their ability to live a life of dignity is at risk. How can they respond when they are literally feeling violence against them, literally feeling that oppression coming back into their lives?
I think the Standing Rock is a great example. Is the indigenous people are, in a way, the tip, because the environment, the destruction, they feel it. They have no choice. I think most of us, we live in modern, in societies more urban, and so we're very privileged. So I think these communities are like, in a way, torches for us. And we, as I guess, activists, we need to go to those places and help. I think we've been a little bit, I think with the Paris climate conference, we were able to see some of that, to hear from the indigenous community. I think more efforts needs to go there to bring more light there and help them to be in the media. And also not just help them with the cause, but also look at their life and how they're structured and see listen to them, understand what their needs are. And I think that's for me, our responsibility coming from more privileged society. For the ones living at the edge, the marginalized area, I think following the model of Standing Rock, firm but non-violent. That's the only way to go. I think the way of using violence, I think this movement has a lot of potential, as we've seen already in history.
And just finally, if you just happen to bump into Donald Trump, so you just happen to sit next to each other on a plane and you had 5 hours together where you could have a conversation with him, well, what would you ask of him as the incoming president?
Let us give each other a chance. I would say, Mr. Trump, I would apologize for misunderstanding him or branding him and discriminating him. And I apologize for creating maybe some suffering. But now you're in a position that has a lot of potential and to create beautiful change, and that we can use this opportunity to listen, to take care of I know you want to help our country, the parts that maybe have also been left out. I think you have a potential to bring a different angle to it, but I know you are not, you cannot just make your own decision. You have many forces. I just ask you, just let us have a chance, our country and the planet. I think this is not about our time, our generation, but it is bigger than that. And you, right now, in the next 4 years, you have a chance to really change our own perception about you. I think the potential is there in you because you don't have as much strings. You're a little bit out there. I know you been in the business world and you've been very successful. So your talent could really help this country. I have that hope in you. And that's what I pray for you every day. That somehow we should not underestimate each other. That we should not look down and brand each other as a certain kind of group or person. That we should always hope, even to the last drop, the last breath, that that person has the ability to really break and wake up. So I keep that alive in me, because I never will, give up. And I see there are a lot of beautiful Americans also waking up, and then every one of us has that potential.
Great, thank you very much.